There's a quiet war happening in every trader's mind. It doesn't shout. It doesn't announce itself with red candles or green spikes. It whispers, soft, convincing, and familiar. That whisper is impulse. Impulse is the silent enemy of every trader who ever believed discipline was enough. Because impulse doesn't fight your rules, it bypasses them. It sneaks in through emotion, through noise, through the illusion of urgency. It makes you feel like acting is more powerful than waiting. And that's how it wins. The first truth most traders never realize is that impulse is not just a behavior, it's a structure of thought. It's how your mind processes uncertainty when your internal system has no foundation. Impulse thrives where silence feels unbearable, when stillness feels like losing. Pause for a second. When was the last time you exited a trade? Not because your model told you to, but because your body couldn't handle the weight. That's impulse disguised as survival. And it feels right. It always does in the moment. But here's the deeper reality. Impulse is not spontaneous. It's patterned chaos. Every time you respond to it, you feed it. Every time you surrender to the emotional signal of act now, you strengthen a neural loop that teaches your system. Structure is optional when emotions are loud. This is why so many traders chase strategies but never change outcomes. Because strategies live on the surface while impulse lives beneath, hidden in your nervous system, woven into your response patterns. You can't outlearn what you haven't untrained. Think about this. You open your chart, you see a setup forming, but before your process confirms, your mind starts narrating, "This looks perfect. I can catch it early. I've seen this before." That narration, that preemptive justification, is not logic. It's a memory of previous impulses replaying themselves. Your brain isn't analyzing, it's relapsing. Impulse gives you a feeling of control right before taking it away. It's like emotional gravity, pulling you downward while convincing you you're flying. Now let's break down its true anatomy. Impulse is born from emotional tension. That tension is created by uncertainty. When your nervous system faces uncertainty without a stable process to rely on, it defaults to primal programming: fight, flight, or force a trade. Impulse is not you losing control. It's your brain protecting you from discomfort. But here's the paradox. In trading, protection is destruction. Because every safe decision made emotionally steals you from structural alignment. The markets don't punish bad trades, they punish bad systems. An impulse is a system, a destructive one, running parallel to your logical model. You can build a perfect plan, and impulse will still whisper, "This time is different." It's never different. It's always disguised. Pause again. How many times have you rationalized your entry because it felt right, or cut a winning trade short because you didn't want to lose it all? That language is not trading vocabulary. It's fear vocabulary, and impulse uses fear as its dialect. The dangerous beauty of impulse is that it gives you temporary relief. You feel better for a moment. The anxiety fades, the screen looks calmer. But underneath, the damage compounds, because you've just told your nervous system that emotion overrides structure. That's how traders unconsciously train themselves to fail, by repeatedly rewarding emotional decisions. Impulse doesn't just live in your execution, it lives in your anticipation. The moment you check your phone 5 times during a trade, impulse is active. The moment you refresh the chart before the candle closes, impulse is whispering. The moment you doubt your setup right before it validates, impulse is already writing your next mistake. Impulse isn't loud, it's habitual silence, and that's what makes it lethal. Every trader wants to feel in control, but the truth is, control doesn't come from doing more. It comes from trusting more. And impulse hates trust, because trust requires stillness. Trust requires you to hold your ground while your brain screams to react. That's why impulse and intention cannot coexist. Impulse is reaction, intention is creation. Impulse moves out of emotion, intention moves out of design. So here's the question I want you to confront today. When you trade, are you expressing a model or relieving an emotion? If it's emotion, you're not trading. You're negotiating with impulse. And impulse always wins negotiations because it offers something. Structure doesn't. Instant comfort. Comfort is the drug. Impulse is the dealer. The market doesn't move because of your discomfort, but your decisions do. Until you master that truth, you'll forever oscillate between moments of clarity and waves of chaos. because impulse will always find a way to turn your silence into action. Let's be brutally honest here. Impulse is not cured by knowledge. It's cured by exposure. You have to see it happen in real time. You have to catch yourself in the act. You have to feel the discomfort and choose stillness instead. That's the first step toward internal sovereignty. The moment you act not because you must, but because your model says it's time. Trading rebels, this is where you start separating noise from narrative. Impulse is not your identity, it's your conditioning. And conditioning can be restructured. But it won't happen through motivational quotes or backtests. It happens through confrontation. The kind of confrontation where you stare at your habits and call them by name, where you stop saying I'm emotional and start saying I'm unstructured. Because once you replace emotion with structure, impulse loses its weapon. And if you're here, watching, learning, dissecting, then you've already taken the first step that most traders never take: awareness. You're not fighting the market. You're fighting the version of yourself that thinks chaos is progress. Impulse is the silent enemy. But the moment you give it a name, it's no longer silent. Now, if this is connecting with you, if you're starting to recognize how deeply impulse has woven itself into your trading identity, pause this video, take a breath, and comment below. I'm building immunity. Because awareness means nothing without acknowledgement. And acknowledgement is the beginning of transformation. You see, trading rebels, this journey isn't about controlling the market. It's about commanding yourself within it. The market rewards structure, not speed. Intention, not impulse. Design, not desperation. Stay with me. In the next section, we'll go deeper into the chaos mindset that fuels this enemy, because impulse doesn't come alone. It's born from a psychological ecosystem, one that thrives on volatility, confusion, and emotional reward. And if you can understand that ecosystem, you can begin to dismantle it from within. So pause, reflect, and get ready for what comes next. This war isn't outside, it's internal. And the only way to win it is to stop playing by its rules. Every trader who loses control to impulse is not just reacting, they are thinking chaotically. Chaos isn't randomness, it's unstructured order, movement without intention, action without alignment. And that's what defines the chaos mindset. It's the mental state where everything feels urgent, but nothing feels grounded. It's when every price move looks like an opportunity, but none looks like a process. You see, chaos in trading isn't found on the chart, it's found in the mind interpreting it. The market isn't chaotic, it's patterned volatility. But when the trader lacks internal structure, volatility becomes chaos, and chaos becomes identity. Let's be real. Most traders don't enter the market to execute a model. They enter to relieve the discomfort of uncertainty. And in that act of emotional relief, they build what I call a chaos loop. The chaos loop starts with uncertainty, triggers discomfort, discomfort demands control, control turns into impulse, impulse leads to loss, loss increases uncertainty, and the cycle repeats. That's the chaos mindset in motion. Pause for a moment. Reflect on your last week of trading. How many trades were born from clarity, and how many were born from emotional reaction? If your answer leans toward the latter, you're not trading the market, you're trading your discomfort. The chaos mindset is seductive. It feels alive. It feels like you're doing something. It feeds the illusion of engagement. But beneath the surface, it's draining you, mentally, emotionally, and structurally. You start your day analyzing the market. You say you're being intentional, but somewhere between your bias and your execution, the market makes a move that triggers you. Your focus shifts from what's happening to what might happen to you. That's the instant chaos takes over. Because chaos begins where self-awareness ends. The chaos mindset thrives on external validation. You refresh your phone not to check data, but to confirm your fear or feed your hope. You scroll through other traders' wins, not to learn, but to justify your doubt. That's not learning, that's emotional comparison. And comparison is the entry point for chaos. Let's get deeper. At the root of chaos lies attachment. Attachment to outcomes, attachment to speed, attachment to identity. When your sense of progress depends on results instead of alignment, chaos becomes the default. It's the same principle behind addiction, repetition without reflection. You take trades not because they align with your system, but because your nervous system needs to feel involved. It's not greed, it's absence of silence. Chaos hates silence because silence forces awareness, and awareness is death to chaos. Now think about how chaos hides behind logic. Sometimes you convince yourself that your entry was based on price action confirmation, but deep down you know it was based on impatience. The mind rebrands chaos as logic to protect the ego. That's why you can't outthink chaos. You must outstructure it. Trading rebels, listen closely. The chaos mindset is not emotional immaturity. It's structural absence. You can't manage chaos by trying to feel less. You manage it by building a framework strong enough to hold emotion without breaking. Most traders lose not because they don't know what to do, but because they don't know how to think under pressure. Chaos is mental pressure mismanaged. It's when information overwhelms identity. And this is the part that many never confront. Chaos is attractive because it gives you temporary meaning. When your life outside trading lacks order, the market becomes your playground for emotional release. Every candle becomes a reflection of your internal noise. Every win validates your worth. Every loss questions it. This is why chaos is not a trading problem. It's a life structure problem manifesting in trading form. If your mind is disorganized, your charts will look like war zones. The market amplifies whatever structure or lack of it you bring. That's why you can't fix your charts without first fixing your mindset. Now let's turn this inward. Ask yourself right now, do you approach the market with a mission or with a mood? Do you wake up structured or do you wake up scrolling? Do you check your charts to confirm your model or to confirm your emotions? If your pre-market routine is emotionally reactive, your trading day will always be chaotic. Because chaos doesn't start when you click buy or sell, it starts the moment you engage without alignment. Pause and let that sink in. How you enter the market determines how you experience it. If you enter with confusion, you will see confusion. If you enter with intention, you will find order, even in volatility. That's the paradox of chaos. It's always filtered through perception. When you lack structure, even structure looks chaotic. And this is where the transformation begins. When you realize chaos isn't your enemy, it's your mirror. It shows you where your systems are weak, where your emotions still lead, where your discipline is conditional. Chaos isn't there to destroy you, it's there to reveal you. That's the point where a reactive trader begins to evolve into an intentional one. That's when chaos stops being a battlefield and becomes feedback. But you have to be brutally honest with yourself. Every time you've said the market is crazy, what you really meant was my mind is unprepared. Because the market has always been the same, fluctuating, unpredictable, volatile. The only thing that changes is you. And when chaos is your internal language, even normal volatility feels personal. You start taking candles as insults. You start reading losses as judgments. But the market doesn't know your name. It only knows your structure. That's why your greatest enemy isn't volatility. It's identification. When you identify with your trades, you lose sight of your model. You start defending positions instead of executing processes. Pause again. You might not like what I'm about to say, but you need to hear it. Most traders are emotionally loyal to their trades, but emotionally disconnected from their structure. That's chaos. Emotional loyalty without logical alignment. So, how do you start breaking this cycle? You rebuild identity from intention, not outcome. You remind yourself that the goal is not to be right, it's to be aligned. Because when you're aligned, chaos loses its grip. You stop reacting to every tick. You stop chasing every move. You stop searching for comfort in confirmation. And suddenly, what used to feel chaotic starts to feel mechanical, predictable even, because chaos can only dominate the unstructured mind. Let's take a quick pause here. If you're feeling this truth, if you're realizing that your real war has always been with chaos, not with the chart, then this message is for you. Trading Rebels isn't just a community, it's a declaration. It's where we dismantle chaos through intentional design. So if this is hitting home, subscribe, share this message, and drop a comment below saying, "From chaos to command." That's how you declare your shift, publicly, consciously, intentionally. Now let's conclude this part with one brutal but freeing truth. You cannot destroy chaos by force. You can only outlast it through structure. The chaos mindset will always try to tempt you back, whispering that spontaneity is freedom. But freedom without form is just faster failure. True freedom in trading is predictable behavior, because predictability is power, not the power over markets, but power over self. And when you begin to design your mental environment with intention, chaos will still appear, but it won't own you. You'll see volatility and your body will stay calm. You'll see uncertainty and your system will stay aligned. That's when you know you're no longer reacting to chaos, you're commanding it. The market rewards that kind of mind. Not the mind that knows more, but the one that trusts more. Trusts its model, trusts its rhythm, trusts its process. So, when the next impulsive urge comes, the next time you feel that itch to act before confirmation, don't fight it. Observe it. Because awareness is the first crack in chaos. You don't defeat what you deny. You transcend it by understanding it. And that's what we're doing here, Trading Rebels, dismantling chaos from the inside out. In the next section, we'll talk about the next phase in this internal war, building immunity. Because knowing your enemy is one thing, but constructing the system that neutralizes it, that's where mastery begins. So take a deep breath. You've seen chaos for what it is. Now it's time to build the immunity that keeps you free from it. When you've seen the enemy, when you've confronted chaos, the next logical question is, how do you become immune to it? Not resistant, not occasionally disciplined, immune. Immunity doesn't mean you never feel impulse again. It means impulse stops influencing your behavior. It becomes background noise, not your internal compass. That's the real victory. And immunity, my friend, is not built in silence or meditation. It's built in exposure. You must expose yourself to discomfort until it no longer triggers distortion. Most traders want peace before process. They say, once I stop feeling anxious, I'll trade better. But that's backward. You trade better first, then peace follows. Peace is the result of alignment, not its precondition. To build immunity, you must stop trying to escape emotion and start retraining your response to it. Let's break this down clearly. The mind learns through repetition. The nervous system learns through exposure. So every time you face uncertainty and stay structured, your system rewires slightly. Each exposure builds tolerance. Each tolerance builds immunity. But if you keep reacting emotionally, you reinforce fragility. You teach your system, uncertainty equals pain. I must react to survive. That's how impulse becomes chronic. The cure is repetition of the right process, under the same pressure that used to break you. Pause and think about that. You're not here to eliminate impulse. You're here to disempower it. Building immunity is about creating a pattern stronger than the impulse pattern. Structure must become more emotionally rewarding than chaos. And that only happens when you link discipline to identity, not to effort. Let's make that practical. If you see yourself as a disciplined trader, discipline becomes a task, something you must do. But if you see yourself as a structured designer, discipline becomes your nature. And nature doesn't need reminders, it operates automatically. That's the secret most traders miss. Immunity isn't willpower. It's identity repetition. Your mind doesn't follow your goals. It follows your patterns. And if your patterns are emotional, your results will be unstable. But when your patterns are structural, your results begin to stabilize. Not because you've changed the market, but because you've changed your internal architecture. This is where most traders fail. They expect mental immunity from inconsistent repetition. They train once, they relapse, and then they question their discipline. But discipline is not proven in moments of comfort. It's proven in moments of repetition under stress. Trading rebels understand this truth. Consistency doesn't come from confidence. It comes from calibration. Confidence is emotional. Calibration is structural. Confidence says, I feel ready. Calibration says, I am ready because my system is intact. Immunity grows every time you act in alignment despite emotional contradiction. When your body screams to exit early, but your model says hold, and you hold. When your mind wants to revenge trade, but your structure says pause, and you pause. That's immunity in progress. You don't become unshakable overnight. You become unshakable by surviving moments that used to shake you. Pause for a moment. Reflect on your trading journey. How many times have you been in a setup that fit your system, yet you doubted it halfway through? How many times did you take profit too early, only to watch price hit your original target? That's not about knowledge, it's about tolerance. You don't need a new strategy, you need a new nervous system, because your strategy can't execute if your body interprets uncertainty as danger. That's why building immunity starts in state management, not strategy management. Here's what that looks like in practice. 1. You identify your trigger. Maybe it's price pulling back near your stop. 2. You notice your emotional spike, anxiety, tension, the urge to do something. 3. You breathe, not to calm down, but to pause the narrative. 4. You observe the emotion, name it, don't judge it. 5. You return to your model, confirm your structure still aligns. 6. You choose your next move, not by emotion, but by design. That 6-step loop is how you train immunity. Every repetition embeds control deeper into your neural system, and over time, something powerful happens. The same situations that once triggered panic start to feel neutral. Your body stays calm. Your breathing slows naturally. You no longer chase control, you embody it. That's the difference between the reactive trader and the intentional trader. One reacts to uncertainty, the other uses it as confirmation of alignment. Because the intentional trader knows uncertainty is not chaos. It's the proof of potential. Immunity allows you to see potential where fear once lived. But let's make this brutally clear. Building immunity requires sacrifice. You will have to lose the comfort of emotional indulgence. You will have to forfeit the adrenaline of reaction. You will have to detach from the illusion of urgency. That's hard because chaos feels alive, impulse feels thrilling, and structure feels boring until it starts paying you. The boredom of structure is the foundation of mastery because mastery doesn't need excitement, it needs consistency. Pause again. Ask yourself, do you crave excitement or consistency? Because your answer reveals your relationship with structure. If you crave excitement, you're addicted to chaos. If you crave consistency, you're aligned with structure. Now here's where it gets deep. Your system must reward structure emotionally, or you'll relapse. This means you must redefine what winning feels like. Winning is not when you make money. Winning is when you execute with alignment, regardless of outcome. That's how you train your nervous system to associate satisfaction with structure, not speed. And when that rewiring completes, impulse loses its currency. So, how do you accelerate that rewiring? Through repetition. Not random, but deliberate repetition. The kind of repetition that reinforces your identity as an intentional trader. Every morning you remind yourself, my job is not to predict, it's to execute. Every trade you close, you review. Did I act out of design or emotion? Every week you audit your process. Where did structure hold? Where did impulse leak in? That's repetition. That's how immunity is born. Now pause, because this part is crucial. Most traders seek immunity through avoidance. They stop trading after emotional losses, thinking time will heal it. But time doesn't heal impulse. Repetition does. The market is not your enemy. It's your training ground. Every candle tests your immunity. Every volatile session builds resilience. And every mistake is an opportunity to reinforce your design. The mistake only becomes toxic when you repeat it unconsciously. But when you review it consciously, it becomes medicine. Trading rebels, hear this clearly. Mistakes are structural feedback, not identity failures. If you learn to see feedback instead of failure, immunity strengthens automatically. That's how professionals think. They don't protect their ego, they protect their system. They don't react to pain, they re-engineer response. They don't chase calm, they train for calm. And that's what separates mastery from mediocrity. Now let's pause for our midpoint reinforcement. If you're still here, still listening, still reflecting, then you're part of the few who don't just want motivation, but transformation. This is Trading Rebels, where we design intention into identity. If this is your tribe, subscribe, share this video, and comment below. Structure is my immunity. That's how you build public accountability for private mastery. Because immunity doesn't grow in isolation. It grows in community, among those who speak the same structural language. And as you keep training, something profound happens. The market stops feeling like a threat. It starts feeling like a reflection. You realize the market is neutral. It's your interpretation that creates emotional volatility. That's when trading transforms from chaos management into structure expression. Your mind becomes quieter. your trades become cleaner. Your equity curve begins to mirror your inner stillness. That's the art of immunity. Your behavior remains predictable even when the market is not. Remember this truth: discipline is a reaction to chaos. Immunity is freedom from it. You don't need to fight impulse forever. You need to evolve beyond it. And evolution happens when your structure becomes stronger than your emotion. That's how intention wins, not by resisting impulse, but by outlasting it through design. So before we move forward, repeat this to yourself, not as affirmation, but as declaration. I am immune to chaos because I am aligned with structure. Let that sentence echo in your mind until it feels true. Because truth, when repeated intentionally, becomes identity. And identity is the ultimate immunity. Next, we move into the heart of repetition, the sacred process of refinement. Because immunity is not the end, it's the beginning of consistency. Now that you've built resistance to impulse, it's time to anchor that resistance through repetition of process. That's how temporary awareness becomes permanent alignment. When the noise fades and the emotions settle, what remains is process. Not excitement, not confidence. Process. The truth most traders never accept is that mastery isn't a result of brilliance. It's a result of boredom managed well. Because success in trading is not built from the intensity of your actions, but from the consistency of your repetitions. Repetition is the mother of immunity. Every system, every model, every edge that endures through repetition. But repetition doesn't just mean doing the same thing over and over again. It means doing the right thing with the same structure until it becomes your nature. That's the difference between routine and rhythm. A routine is mechanical, a rhythm is alive, and mastery is when your structure develops rhythm, a living process that breathes with you, responds with you, and reinforces you. Repetition of process is not glamorous. It doesn't feel heroic. It feels mundane, almost too simple to be sacred. But that simplicity is what stabilizes your identity. Think about it. Every professional athlete, every disciplined performer, every consistent trader, they're not chasing stimulation. They're reinforcing structure. They've learned to fall in love with the repetition that others avoid. Because repetition doesn't just build memory, it builds belief. The more you repeat a process successfully, the more your nervous system begins to trust it. That trust is the seed of confidence that doesn't break under pressure. Now pause. Think about your current trading process. How many parts of it are intentional, and how many are emotional improvisations? If your routine changes with your mood, you're not following a process. You're following a pattern of reaction. Repetition exposes that truth. It shows you where you're stable and where you're impulsive. The market doesn't reward creativity, it rewards consistency. And consistency is the fruit of repetition. The kind of repetition that feels uncomfortable, predictable, even dull. But here's the paradox. What feels boring to your emotions feels safe to your structure. And safety is the foundation of scalability. You cannot scale chaos. You can only scale what is repeated, measurable, and predictable. So when you build your process, understand this. The goal is not excitement. The goal is execution. Each repetition is a vote for stability. Each review is a signal to your system, this is who I am. That's why repetition must be deliberate. Mindless repetition reinforces disorder. Mindful repetition reinforces design. Here's a truth to hold close. You are not what you think. You are what you repeat. Pause and internalize that. You are not the trader you imagine yourself to be. You are the trader your daily behaviors prove you are. If your structure is inconsistent, your outcomes will echo that inconsistency. Because results are reflections, not rewards. Now, let's look at repetition from a structural perspective. The goal of repetition is not perfection. It's reinforcement. You repeat your entry criteria, your risk allocation, your journaling, not to avoid failure, but to deepen trust. Each cycle of repetition creates what I call model memory. Model memory is the subconscious trust your system develops through pattern familiarity. It's when your body begins to respond to uncertainty with calm because it recognizes the structure it's trained to trust. That's how traders evolve from reactive to responsive, not by suppressing emotion, but by out-training it through repetition. And this is where most traders quit. They think repetition is tedious because they're chasing stimulation, not transformation. They want novelty, not refinement. But novelty is the enemy of mastery. You don't need a new system. You need a deeper relationship with your current one. Every time you change strategies, you restart the repetition clock. And restarting resets trust. Your nervous system never learns consistency because it never gets to complete a full feedback loop. That's why traders who system hop rarely evolve. They're addicted to the illusion of progress. Repetition requires humility. The humility to do the same thing repeatedly without craving validation. Because validation is external, but reinforcement is internal. Pause again. Ask yourself, do you seek external validation or internal reinforcement? Because one builds ego, the other builds structure. When you repeat your process, you're not just refining technique, you're reprogramming identity. Each repetition tells your mind, this is how I behave under pressure. And your nervous system records that truth until it becomes automatic. That's how traders develop composure. Composure isn't a gift, it's a repetition outcome. When you've seen enough setups, enough losses, enough recoveries, the unknown stops feeling dangerous. It starts feeling familiar. That's repetition in motion. It's not about feeling nothing, it's about feeling everything, but acting on nothing outside your design. Now here's the secret most won't tell you. Repetition is not about results, it's about rhythm. When you establish rhythm, the market stops dictating your mood. You become the constant in a variable environment. You know when to engage, you know when to step back, you know when silence is more profitable than activity. That's what repetition does. It builds instinctual discipline. Because discipline practiced long enough becomes instinct. Pause and reflect. How often do you execute without thought? Not because of impulse, but because of pure model familiarity? That's the zone professionals live in. The zone isn't magic, it's memory. The zone is what happens when repetition replaces hesitation. And that's what I want you to internalize, trading rebels. Repetition is not the death of creativity. It's the birth of control. Every day you repeat your process, you sharpen awareness, you start noticing micro signals others miss, you start sensing momentum shifts without guessing, you start feeling alignment rather than chasing it. That's mastery, the merger of instinct and design. But repetition has one demand, faith in the process, even when results are delayed. Because repetition tests your patience before it rewards your progress. Many traders abandon their structure during consolidation, not just in price, but in their psychology. They mistake stillness for stagnation, but repetition works in silence. It's not visible until it is. Think of it like this. A seed repeats growth underground before it ever breaks the surface. A model repeats calibration beneath performance before it ever shows profit. Repetition builds roots before it builds results. That's why you must trust your cycle. If you break your process mid-cycle, you interrupt your own calibration. You deny your structure the chance to prove itself. And that's why repetition is not emotional, it's procedural. Every time you repeat a trade plan, you're telling your mind, we are not reacting, we are refining. Every time you follow your exit rule precisely, you teach your system. We are consistent under pressure. And that's what builds credibility, internal credibility. Because before the market trusts you with consistent profit, your mind must trust you with consistent behavior. You can't lead in the market if you can't lead yourself through repetition. So here's your internal audit moment. If you removed your emotions from your process, how much of it would remain intact? Would your structure still stand without motivation? Because repetition is not about inspiration, it's about integration. Now let's anchor this truth midway. If this message resonates, if you're realizing that mastery is not about doing more, but repeating better, then I want you to pause and type in the comments. Repetition is my edge. And make sure you subscribe, because this community isn't built on hype. It's built on design. We repeat truth until it becomes transformation. Back to it. The final key to repetition is reflection. Repetition without reflection becomes stagnation. Reflection without repetition becomes illusion. The balance of both creates evolution. Every end of week, reflect, not on profit, but on precision. Ask, did my behavior match my blueprint? If not, recalibrate, not emotionally, but procedurally. You're not fixing yourself, you're refining your process. That's what professionals do. They don't journal to vent, they journal to verify alignment. They don't review charts for excitement, they review to identify deviation. That's how repetition builds momentum, not through emotion, but through evaluation. Over time, repetition creates what I call mental automation. You no longer negotiate with impulse. Your structure becomes reflex, and your emotions lose decision-making authority. At that point, trading becomes effortless. Not easy. Effortless. Because effortlessness is the byproduct of consistent repetition. And here's the hidden truth behind all of this. Repetition is love. Yes, love. Because you only repeat what you respect, and you only respect what you believe has value. When you repeat your process daily, you're not just refining skill, you're showing reverence for your design. That reverence turns trading from gambling into artistry. Repetition makes you one with your model. You don't follow it, you embody it. You don't trade it, you express it. That's when trading ceases to be about money and becomes about mastery. Because money is just the byproduct of structural repetition. You are not here to react. You are here to rehearse your design until it becomes second nature. That's how you command probability, not through prediction, but through preparation, repeated so consistently that randomness bends to your rhythm. And that rhythm, trading rebels, is your true identity, the unshakable heartbeat of structure. Next, we enter the final phase of this doctrine, trusting structure. Because repetition means nothing if trust doesn't hold. Without trust, you will sabotage the very system you've spent months building. So take this truth into your core. You become your process the moment you stop questioning it. And that's when intention replaces impulse, permanently. At the end of every evolution, there comes a single test: trust. Not trust in the market, not trust in the system, but trust in your structure. Everything you've learned, every repetition you've rehearsed, every layer of immunity you've built, they all lead to this moment of surrender. Because structure is not just a set of rules, it's a covenant. And trust is the currency that keeps that covenant alive. When you don't trust your structure, you betray your process. And betrayal is the root of inconsistency. Every time you override your plan, you're not just disobeying rules, you're breaking alignment with your design. And that internal break is what triggers chaos. So let's ask the most honest question every trader must face. Do you trust your structure when it hurts? Do you trust it when it delays gratification? Do you trust it when it tells you not to act? Because trust is not proven in comfort. It's proven in tension. When your model says wait, and your emotions say move, the choice you make in that moment defines your identity. The truth is, structure doesn't fail. People do. And they fail not because they're incapable, but because they cannot stay faithful to what they built. Trust is what turns structure into sovereignty. Without trust, your process becomes paperwork. But with trust, your structure becomes power. Trust transforms your rules from limitation to liberation. Because the more you trust your structure, the freer you become from emotional interference. Now pause for a moment. Reflect on this. Every time you followed your system faithfully, didn't you feel an internal calm? Even if the trade lost, that calm was not about the outcome. It was about integrity. You stayed true to your framework, and that integrity breeds authority. Authority doesn't come from winning trades. It comes from alignment. The alignment between what you say you'll do and what you actually do. That's what trust looks like in motion. But let's not romanticize it. Trusting structure is not easy. It demands detachment from the illusion of control. It requires you to accept that your job is not to know what will happen, but to obey what's already designed. And that's hard, because the human ego is wired for interference. We want to tweak, to adjust, to predict, to personalize every moment, even when that personalization destroys precision. Trusting structure means surrendering to a higher design you've built intentionally. It means understanding that structure doesn't exist to please you. It exists to protect you. So here's the paradox. You built your structure to control risk, yet you must now surrender control to that very structure. That's the moment where most traders fail. They build something intelligent, but they don't submit to it. They want freedom, but not discipline. They want control, but not responsibility. They want results, but not repetition. But structure doesn't negotiate. It demands submission before it releases consistency. Every intentional trader must go through this sacred conflict, the battle between self-will and structural will. The reactive trader says, I think. The intentional trader says, the model says. That shift changes everything. Because the market doesn't care about what you think. It only responds to structure. The reason professionals outperform is not because they predict better. It's because they obey better. They have internalized obedience to structure as a form of mastery. That obedience is not weakness. It's discipline refined into instinct. Let's make this practical. Imagine you've taken a trade according to your structure. Price moves against you temporarily. Emotion rises. Your mind begins whispering, close it early, protect the gain, adjust the plan. But your structure says, hold, the model hasn't invalidated yet. In that instant, trust is not a feeling, it's a decision. And the decision to trust the structure trains your nervous system to detach from the outcome, because your confidence no longer lives in market direction, it lives in process direction. That's the difference between gambling and governance. Gamblers hope for the market's mercy. Governed traders command behavior through design, and that governance is born out of trust. When you trust structure, you stop needing confirmation from chaos. You stop seeking validation from volatility. You stop reacting to price. You respond from principle. That's the essence of intentional trading. But let's take this even deeper. Trust is not just emotional, it's structural energy. When you trust your design, your energy is no longer fragmented between doubt and decision. All your cognitive power unifies under one directive: execution. That unity produces flow. Flow is not mystical, it's mechanical alignment between clarity, confidence, and control. And that's what structure gives you when you trust it fully. Here's the hidden law. Structure without trust creates friction. Structure with trust creates fluidity. Every friction you feel in trading, hesitation, doubt, second guessing, is not a technical issue, it's a trust issue. You already know what to do, but knowing isn't the problem. Trusting what you know is. That's why repetition was essential, because repetition builds familiarity, and familiarity breeds trust. Now you see how every layer of this doctrine connects. Impulse is the enemy, chaos is the symptom, immunity is the defense, repetition is the training, and trust is the transcendence. It's the stage where you no longer question your structure, you become it. When that happens, trading stops being an emotional sport. It becomes a spiritual discipline. You stop chasing control and start embodying composure. You stop seeking confirmation and start moving in conviction. And that's when you finally command probability, not because you're perfect, but because you're aligned. Now pause again, trading rebels. Ask yourself, have you learned to trust your structure, or are you still negotiating with your fears? Because your consistency depends on the answer. If you still flinch, it's not because your system is weak, it's because your trust is. And trust is not built through thinking. It's built through experience and endurance. Every time you honor your process in discomfort, trust strengthens. Every time you betray your process for comfort, trust weakens. It's that simple. But let's talk about the most powerful truth of all. Trust cannot coexist with ego. Ego wants to control outcomes. Trust wants to control actions. When ego wins, emotion rules. When trust wins, structure reigns. That's the war being fought inside every trader every day. And the one who wins that internal war commands the external market. Now imagine your life as a trader a year from now. You wake up, review your levels, execute your plan, manage your trade, calm, detached, intentional. Losses don't destabilize you. Wins don't intoxicate you. You operate in rhythm. That is the power of trusting structure. You no longer chase the market. You command probability through design. That's the evolution every member of Trading Rebels must undergo, from emotion to execution, from chaos to command. And this is where I want to embed the close and the call to action. If this truth spoke to you, if you're done reacting, if you're ready to rebuild your relationship with the market through trust and structure, then this is your moment to anchor it. Type it in the comments right now. I trust my structure. Because that's the declaration that marks your graduation from reaction to intention. And while you're here, subscribe, because Trading Rebels isn't a channel, it's a movement. A movement built on structure, not sensation. Design, not dependency. Intention, not impulse. We build traders who lead themselves, not follow signals. You're not here to be taught, you're here to be transformed. And transformation begins when you trust your design more than your doubt. Let's end with this. Trusting structure doesn't mean life gets easier. It means you get stronger. It means every fluctuation becomes feedback. Every loss becomes language. Every hesitation becomes history. Because once you've chosen to trust, the market loses its power to manipulate you. The noise can scream, but you'll stay silent. Not because you don't feel, but because you've become unshakable. That's what trusting structure truly means. The ability to stay still while others scatter. The ability to follow design when chaos tempts you with shortcuts. The ability to see the market not as an opponent, but as a mirror reflecting your own internal state. So when the next wave of uncertainty comes, remember this moment. Remember that your greatest edge was never prediction. It was always trust. Trust is not passive. It's the highest form of discipline. It's the proof that your design works. Not because it avoids risk, but because it commands it. And that, rebels, is where impulse finally dies. When trust takes the throne, emotion becomes a servant, and structure becomes the master of probability. So walk away from this message not just inspired, walk away anchored. Because the silent enemy was never the market. It was the part of you that refused to trust your structure. Now that you've silenced that enemy, you've become what few ever do, an intentional trader. And as always, welcome to Trading Rebels, where we don't just trade charts. We trade chaos for command, we trade impulse for intention, and we trade dependency for design. I'll see you in the next session. But until then, keep repeating, keep refining, and keep trusting. Because structure never fails. People just stop believing before it proves itself. So believe again, this time intentionally.